Hey, y'all. Happy Sunday. Hope everybody is doing well. Oh, man, it's going to be a good show today. It's going to be a good show today. We have Maurice here from Erickson Design and Woodworking. You're in Colorado, correct?
Yep.
And Fusion 360 Master. Get used to that title. I know you looked at me real nervous there. So, if any of y'all are thinking about getting into Fusion 360, or just have some questions about Fusion 360, I'm going to be referring people to Maurice from now on because he's got some real good videos over on his channel. But we'll get into that in just a minute. I'm setting you up. I'm setting you up. Okay. First, I have to say hello to and give a shout out to my friend Steve over at Harneal Media, sponsor of Mark Lindsay CNC.com. If you are even toying with the idea of a website, I talk about this every week. I'm going to continue to do so until Steve tells me to stop it. If you're even toying with the idea of a website, maybe you've got products or services, you want to make files, you want to make products. Spit it out, Mark. Products and projects. You want to develop merch and get your logo put on, I don't know, t-shirts, sweatshirts, baseball caps, coffee mugs, mouse pads, tote bag, whatever. Steve can make all of that happen for you. It's 100% personalized service. When you deal with Harneal Media, you deal with Steve. Was just telling Maurice, I don't know how he does everything he does. I don't think the boys left the house in 4 years, but or longer. But I'm telling you, do yourself a favor. Get over to harnealmedia.com. Click that contact us link and shoot Steve a message and he'll work with you. He can do as much or as little as you'd like. If you're a veteran with websites and are just looking for a good host, he's got you covered. If you're like me and don't know what you're doing with a website, he's got you covered. You can't go wrong. Do yourself a favor. There's a link to Harneal Media down in the description of this live stream and every video and live stream on this channel. And it's that way for a reason. And the reason is he gives you results. He doesn't give you excuses. So thank you for what you do, Steve. I seriously appreciate it. And thanks. So, well, where do we start, Maurice? Where do we begin? You released a video about a week ago, wasn't it? Where you created probably the world's coolest tissue holder. And I watched that and I'm like, where does this guy get his ideas from, man? That is cooler than heck.
Yeah. The tissue holder box, that I ended up finding that on Etsy, and somebody was selling something similar, and it had this really cool shape to it. And I was like, man, I probably could make that. And so just taking that picture, that snapshot of what, their version of that, I just did all the CAD work in Fusion, did all the tool pathing, and got fun with it, doing dual-sided operations and doing some V carving along, curved surfaces, and just putting some extra flair on it, and it turned out pretty good. So this is the little, and it has magnets, so it just basically just clicks together. And we've been using it this past week, and I think the wife has claimed this.
Gee, does that happen?
This really cool engraving right on top of it, and then I don't know if you guys can see it, but it shifts that color, and depending on how the light hits it, it just kind of merges. So if you look directly on top of it, it looks black, and then it just kind of shifts that color a little bit. It gives it something a little bit extra.
And you did that with a gold paint pen, correct?
Yeah, because usually I'll paint and the paint gets everywhere, and then I'll get frustrated, and then I'll just coat the entire layer with paint. I'll put sanding sealer, on top of it before I do the paint. That way it doesn't bleed and all that craziness. But this one I use that fine tip paint marker. Somebody mentioned it either on your live stream or IDC Woodcraft a couple months ago, and I was like, that's my solution for the majority of my problems when it comes to painting wood.
Yeah, and it works good. I mean, it didn't react with the sealer that you used or anything like that. So,
Yep.
I mean, hey, whatever makes it work. Now, was that your first double-sided project?
No, I'd done a couple in the
Mhm.
past. And I'll bring this up.
Okay.
Um, I did a cribbage board
Hmm.
that had this hourglass on top of it, and I'll pull this up. Do
Okay, there we go.
So this was just a rounded cribbage board, and I
Hmm.
put this hourglass on top of the profile where it's
Uh-huh.
set, and I was able to put a little notch on the bottom where I could glue it down.
Right.
But it followed that entire contour. So that was my first dual-sided machining that I've ever done.
Uh-huh.
And luckily, it actually turned out pretty well.
That looks awesome. Now, am I wrong? Is that a perpetual calendar?
It is, and it is. I'll show another version of or another screen grab of this.
Okay.
Um, Let me stop this. And
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I could have just pulled you out, but that way you didn't have to stop sharing, but that's okay.
yeah, my bad.
No, don't worry about it.
Looking the software is actually pretty intuitive. But yeah, it was a perpetual calendar, but it didn't move. So
Mhm.
the idea was it would capture an anniversary date or a wedding date, something
Ah,
very significant. And the cribbage board was labeled when time stood still. So that specific date, everything kind of stopped. And it had a lot of sentimental value for the person that I made it for. And they can enjoy it. They're big cribbage players.
yeah.
But that stuff was set. I poured epoxy all the way down, and it was just one piece after I got done with it.
Okay. Okay. That looks amazing. And correct me if I'm wrong, that's walnut, correct?
Yeah, this is walnut. This
Hmm.
is um, oh, what is it called?
Is that yellow heart or
It's not yellow heart.
canary wood?
It's on the same lines.
I'm trying to think of all the yellow woods I know.
Osage. This
I'm sorry?
Osage orange.
Osage orange. Okay. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's a tough wood,
Hmm.
and that stuff goes everywhere. So the Osage is this,
Hmm.
and then what I did was I outlined the inlay with epoxy. So it really broke everything up.
Yeah.
Made it
And
very
that,
seamless where I didn't have any gaps or anything like that because Fusion doesn't do V carving very well,
mhm.
especially if you're inlaying with a V carve. Um, it's not impossible, but it's not the best solution, and other software does it way better. Um,
Okay. Okay.
but that was my trick of just getting around that capability gap and
Hmm.
making it work for what I wanted to do.
Well, it's also a nice custom touch because it looks finished,
Right.
you know, and that I think is an excellent touch. My grandfather told me years ago that the difference between a carpenter and a craftsman is a craftsman knows how to hide
Yeah.
mistakes.
Yeah.
And while the gaps in an inlay like that may not be a mistake, it may be just a design limitation. The ability to do something that A looks planned, B looks finished, and C just flat out looks good.
Right.
That's a great way to go. I love it. I think that looks fantastic.
And that curvature is pretty defined. So when you see it, you can tell that it's curved.
Hmm.
And the inlays follow that curvature basically perfect. You
Yeah,
can't see any divots or
right.
anything when you really get close into it, and that
Mhm.
makes all the world of difference when you're looking at a piece of physical material that should be finished.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And wow, I mean, I love it. That looks fantastic. And again, that was called uh, "Stop a Moment in Time" or
It's when time stood still.
"When Time Stood Still." Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's an excellent idea. Where'd you come up with that idea?
Uh, I can't remember offhand. I saw a lot of perpetual calendars
Right.
because I think right at that time I was looking at laser machines,
Mm-hmm.
and like that's almost a rite of passage where you make a perpetual calendar that can spin,
Yeah.
and you make it out of plywood. And I was looking at it, and I was like, I bet I could do that out of hardwood, and I can use my CNC machine to do it.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, when it does rotate around, is it going to get binded? Is it not going to is it going to be hard to turn around? And I was like, the easiest way is let's just make it where it doesn't move. And that led me to the next step of, what's the actual purpose of the function of the cribbage board?
Yeah. 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 And that, I mean, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I really dig it. And if anybody has any questions at all for Maurice or myself, by all means, please do put them in the chat over here on the side. Now, where I was going with this whole double-sided project, you've got your tissue box up here. Now, I've never done a two-sided project in Fusion. I've not done a full project in Fusion. How is the workflow when it comes to doing something like that? Pretty straightforward, or because I know you do a few things differently than I do.
Yeah, I think the workflow is still the same,
Mm-hmm.
but like you have to really plan out what cuts you're going to do and when.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at from the bottom portions, this sits in the material differently than this will sit in the material.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on your length of your bits, because this was cutting down 8/4 that was plain to inch and 3/4 material.
Mm-hmm.
I had to make sure that when I cut it out, my bit was long enough to go in there and actually cut it out. So that dictated that I would have to do this top portion first. And then when I flipped it upside down, this was higher in the material for my bit to go around and actually cut the material out.
Right.
That was probably one of the most important, steps into figuring out the flow of all my tool paths and how I wanted to end it.
Did you need to machine out from the shape to give a little bit more room for the bit to get down in there without a crash, like your collet hitting or something like that?
Yeah. Yep. So I built that in. I cut my material a little bit larger than the overall width of, each piece.
Right.
And that gave me just a little bit of a leeway. When I flipped it, I still had my inch and 3/4 inch material standing up.
Yeah.
And inside that was just the one piece. Actually, let me show a video of how I left that room. I'll make sure I mute this.
That's okay.
Let's see if this will actually load.
Yeah, it's running now. Okay, so that was done as a just a standard 3D shape.
Right. So that was the top view.
Mm-hmm.
And I left meat along this, but I made sure that I had enough room for my tool path wouldn't hit that wall.
Right.
So I just planned, just an extra 1/4 inch, maybe 3/16 worth of material gap. So it was just, I knew I wasn't going to run into anything. And in Fusion, I can really visualize that.
Yeah.
When I do my simulation, and it will warn me if there's, I'm at risk of hitting that wall or
a potential crash.
The lead tracks up,
Yeah. That's nice. Butch Miller is asking, beautiful piece. How many trials and errors before the final result?
Just one.
Just one?
Yep.
You did try it in scrap before you did the real cut? No.
No, I went live with it. When I catted it and I did all the tool path generation in Fusion, when I simulated everything, I was very, very comfortable knowing that everything was correct simulation wise, that I could go right into real world operations with real material and I would get the same result.
Okay. That's one advantage that I know Fusion has over Vectric, in that in Fusion, as you mentioned briefly, it will give you a warning if you've got a potential crash there.
It will. It
Yeah.
will. Yep.
Hmm.
And it could be the tool is not deep enough,
Hmm.
and then all of a sudden, how you position your router and
Hmm.
the call it, everything you can put into Fusion to give you a realistic idea of limitations, or something that's is not right, and it will simulate that. Super awesome to have.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Let me, we've got a couple of, yeah, Kimberly is saying you are fearless. Uh, um,
You should see my scrap pile though. It took me a long time to get there.
I think we all have that. And I'm Scottish. I'm cheap. I'm so cheap. Well, no, I won't get into that. I've got two totes, 2 5-gallon buckets, and a box full of scrap pieces over here that I refuse to throw out, because if nothing else, they will make good end grain cutting board material. I don't throw anything out. I call my planer the eraser. So if I make a mistake, it's going to end up in something else. Okay.
So this perfect example. This is zero value. Extremely expensive piece of wood that
Mhm,
I was doing a cribbage board on,
mhm.
and I was doing all these inlays. This is inlaid veneer, and it's
Okay.
burl, and there's a whole laundry list of different types in it. Um, but when I shaved all this epoxy off, because I epoxied lines and all this really crazy stuff in it,
Mhm.
I messed my zero up, and I took maybe a hundredth of an inch too deep, and it took all my veneer right off.
Oh,
So scrap pile. I'll probably shave this off and redo it, and I still got enough thickness, right?
yeah.
But again, expensive material that
Well,
can really throw you off, and especially depending on the budget that you have and all this stuff.
mhm.
Like those mistakes can get pretty costly pretty fast.
And that's why I don't throw it away, because I mean,
Right.
that's still a fairly large chunk of material, and you can get good parts out of that. So, you know, yeah. Let's see here. Loaded question from Gary Meyer. Thank you for becoming a channel member, Gary. Is Fusion easier than Aspire?
So I don't have a lot of history with Aspire. I can tell you about Fusion that there is there's not just one option in Fusion that is geared towards woodworkers and CNC.
Mhm.
This thing has modeling simulations to do structural tension, and there's a whole laundry list of features in this thing that don't apply to a woodworker, unless you're doing something really crazy. But because of that, there are so many options that don't apply that you can get lost on trying to, do something very simple, and you can go down a road that just overcomplicates your entire process to the point where you can't finish it. That's a huge concern with Infusion right now. And I know some of the developers, I've talked to a couple of them, that they're talking about doing a environment specifically for woodworking, different, or other applications for different industry. Um, so that would be super awesome,
Yeah.
because when I draw a sketch and Fusion starts using all my CPU power, it's not because of that sketch that it's trying to do for my CNC operation. It's bouncing that through the entirety of Fusion for every
Mhm.
single capability that it's trying to offer you.
Yeah.
And when you get over complex sketches, it can really bog your computing power down. So that's a huge downfall. So,
Um, the way I've heard it described is Fusion is a pretty big hammer.
right.
How hard do you want to swing it? And you're exactly right. When I was trying to learn Fusion, first of all, it's not the right software for the type of material woodworking I do. I tend to do the relief type carving and V carving, and it's way too much for that.
Right.
You know, that's like trying to drive a thumbtack into the wall with a 5-pound sledgehammer. I mean, you're going to make some holes. So, but if you are talking about creating parts for assemblies, or you are talking about structure, things of that nature, one of the lines I use a lot when I'm talking about a lot of the projects that I make is, we're not building a bridge here. You know,
Yeah.
it's a picture frame. We're not building the bridge. But
Right.
in Fusion, you could literally design and build a bridge and do stress analysis and things like that. So it just depends on what you want to do.
Yeah. And there's a huge, there's an architectural engineering saying where, you know, form follows function. I don't know if anybody's heard that, but that is, it directly applies to Fusion when you're trying to design something that functions a certain way, but all the processes and like different things that you can do to it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, if it doesn't get to the overall function of what you're trying to make, you don't
Right.
need to do it.
Yeah.
And it kind of distracts from, you know, trying to get back into the garage and get off the computer and actually build it.
Yeah. I agree with that. And that's something that I think we all fall into, no matter what software you're using, is it's real easy to get caught up in the minutia of the details. And something I try to embed in people is to zoom out and back up and actually look at what you're doing. Remember the size, the scale of the project, and remember the project's placement. If you're building something that you're going to mount on the end of your house and it's going to be seen from 15 feet below it, is that little detail even going to be seen? Are you going to sand it out when you go to prep the
Right.
finish? I mean, it's
Yep.
real easy to zoom in too close. So,
Yeah.
but by the same token, if you're going to hold it in your hand like that cribbage board you just had, you got to be nitpicky on something like that. So,
Yeah. And, you know, one of the biggest benefits, especially to this, you know, you could call this a prototype,
mm-hmm,
right? Say if I wanted this to be higher,
mm-hmm,
instead of, you know, redoing everything, you know, I can pull up Fusion 360 and I can adjust, and I can manipulate that and do a different version of that prototype,
mm-hmm.
very, very fast, to the point where all I have to do is I ended up doing a form on this, but say if I wanted to make this, you know, higher, I can go right in and I can adjust this entire model. And because my workflow is in sequence, within my timeline history of all my edits, this was the first, you know, version. If I was to modify any of this and bring this up higher, everything updates. So my bottom is now different. My tops are different. And then I can go to my tool pathing, and all I got to do is just rerun all of my tool paths, and
it will reflect
right
that change.
Yep, it applies that change to everything.
Oh, so, wow!
Very, very fast, and I don't have to reinvent the wheel, or if things get really wonky really, really fast, and
yeah.
But a simple change, and that would change the overall, dynamic of what this would be. This would look completely different.
Yeah.
So you can do that really, really fast.
Okay. Let's see here. Brooks Martin is asking, so it's a high processor requirement for Fusion 360?
I'd have to go look at the specs. I have a normal basic computer. It's a laptop. It runs Fusion, no problem. But if I do something really crazy, like a 3D model that I'm trying to bring in, and has all this geometry and all this stuff, like it will crash my computer pretty fast.
Yeah.
So it all depends on what you're doing for the processor.
Yeah. I got around a bunch of that by just going out and buying a gaming computer with a Super Mondo Guando video card that does, well, the reasons were twofold. Number one, it cut down my processing time on edited videos. So it was for actually rendering video. but the side effect was it made a lot of what I do in Vectric a heck of a lot faster, because it's using that GPU in the video card and less on the processor and everything else. So let's see here. We had a couple of other questions. Mike Healy is asking, can you model in Fusion 360, then import into Aspire and Toolpath from there? That's
so yeah, I'm not 100% sure about Aspire, but Vetric, Carbide Create. When I model in Fusion 360, I can export an STL file, and the majority of all softwares, can import those models, and then you can go through the tool pathing later.
Right. Yeah, and that's where I was going to go with that. The short answer is yes, because you can export an STL file from Fusion, and then you can import that into VCarve or Aspire. Remembering that, for instance, in the case of your tissue box model that you just had up, that is 3 separate STL files, correct?
Correct. Well, it's technically 2. But what I do is I include the bottom version of that still, and for both the top and the bottom. As far as the bottom face, you could technically flip that model in whatever program that you're using and get that bottom face, because it's all the same. But it's a little bit easier just importing that one for the bottom, importing the other one for the top face.
Right.
And all 4 are included.
And that addresses VCarve, because in VCarve you can only import one STL file. And so you would have to create one file for the top and another file for the bottom. So just know that there is a restriction there in VCarve Pro, because VCarve Pro is not 3D software. It will allow you to import a 3D model and allow you to carve a 3D model, but it's not 3D software. Aspire is. So yes, it'll export an STL, which you can then import into Aspire. So let's see here. 8th Center is saying, you really need to factor in mistakes in finished pieces so that your customers still cover it and you don't lose good pieces like that. Do you factor that into your costs?
I do. Especially if it's a one-off or it's very unique. I'll budget a certain percentage just for the R&D portion of trying to make that. Or if I need a specific bit to make that operation work. I've ran into that too, where, and that bit was like $40. That went into that overall pricing.
Yeah.
So
you have to recover your costs. And that's why I have always thought that the letter S in the word custom should be a $, because if you want to triple the price of anything, put the word custom in front of it, because you're going to have to do a lot of R&D in there.
Yeah.
And I mean, do you have...
I ran into one. There was one instance where that custom came back and bit me, where I designed something really, really crazy. And I warned the customer, like, hey, like, there's probably like a 50% chance whether this is going to work or not. And it went to, the negative side. And I wasn't able to do it. But it was very complicated. And we made the agreement face to face where, it's either going to work or it's not. And unfortunately, it didn't. I covered all that cost.
Yeah.
I didn't recoup any of that. But like, that's the risk of trying to do something really custom, whether it's going to be successful or not. And that's a factor for the business for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, you do have to factor in things like that, because you can't expect them to cover a failure. And that's also another reason why I tend to, if I've never done something before, I'm very hesitant to do it on a piece that can't be replaced. So if somebody has grandmother's jewelry box and they want their name engraved and this, that, and the other, I've done engraving, I'm normally fine with that. But if they want something I have never done, like right now, I am not in a position to where I would do an inlay on something that's antique. I wouldn't even
Yeah.
attempt it,
Yeah.
you know, because I know my limitations and the potential is there to destroy something that can't be replaced.
Yep.
And it's the same with materials, you know.
Yeah. And that failure was basically, it wasn't a CNC failure. It was a woodworking failure of laminating paperback veneer on a really big structure.
Oh, yeah.
And when I came in with the CNC, it tore it right out because
Yeah.
it didn't adhere correctly.
Yeah.
Learning mistake, you know,
Yeah.
and it happens.
And I ask people when I see veneer inlays, I ask specifically, is that a paper-backed veneer? You know, and because my years in the cabinetry and furniture building, we had to avoid paper-backed veneers like the plague
They're
for just
terrible.
that reason. So the
Yeah.
only exception being tambour, in that some of it is paper backed, most of it is canvas backed. We tried to avoid the paperback stuff. We ended up having to glue down our own canvas. Tambour being strips, like on a roll top desk or something like that. 99% of it is canvas backed, but that 1%, you know, and when a client brings you something, you got to use that. Nope, got to glue our own canvas on it because we're not going to trust the paper. So
Yeah.
it's a giant pain. But yeah, it happens. I hate paperback veneers with a passion.
Yeah. I have learned that now.
Yeah. I mean, it's just one of those things. Um, yeah, Russell Faraday's in the same boat I'm in. Recover cost. You mean I have to sell things I make? Yeah, I'm that way. And Michael Ludwig agrees. He says, I use a gaming computer for Fusion. Yeah, I mean, you can get crazy with that. I mean, I've seen $5, 6, 7, $8,000 computers that these gamers are using, and
Yeah.
I'm like, how the hell can you afford that? You know, I didn't pay that much for my first 20 cars together. You know,
Yeah.
so
You know, that's not the only stop either. Like that costs a lot.
Mhm.
The
Yeah.
software, depending on the
Mhm.
versions that you have, costs.
Yeah.
All that stuff really does add up.
Yeah,
Really,
it
really
does.
fast. It's an expensive hobby.
Yeah, it is. It is. So you got to try to recoup some of it. Now, I'm a weekend warrior. I freely and openly admit that. I'm not opposed to taking the odd commission here and there, but most of the things I make go to friends, family, or stay here with us. So, you know, birthday and Christmas and everything. And believe me, with 5 kids and 7 grandkids, they keep me plenty busy. Um, Al Peleg is asking, can you talk about the creation of the model, the tissue holder model itself? I believe you covered some of that in your video on it, didn't you?
Uh, I didn't go in depth, but I have a couple other videos on my YouTube channel where I deep dive into how to model, how to, you know, push and pull the different forms within Fusion 360 and try to make something that is organically, you know, recognizable of a specific feature or anything like that. And this type of design, Fusion does a really good job of modeling.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm going to model a 3D character, and you can pick whatever character, it's not going to do it. Or it can, but it's just, I haven't figured it out yet. And there's a couple of guys that I've seen where, you know, I saw somebody do an elephant, you know, 3D model in Fusion. And I was just like, I don't know how you did that.
Yeah.
So, but like, you know, very nice curves and get some forms in. A wavy flag is a perfect example. I have this thing behind me. So I did this model in Fusion. This is the updated model. And this thing turned out super good. A lot of deep crevices. And then I ended up using a laser machine to do the engraving on it and stuff like that.
Right.
But Fusion is really, really good at modeling this stuff.
Yeah.
But when you start getting into really, you know, folds or creases or different textures,
Yeah.
It's hard.
And that's an example of parametric design, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
See, there was somebody asking about that here. Let me find it. There it is. Is it possible to design a parametric design with VCarve Pro? It is possible, but it's very time consuming and very, I'm trying to think of the word. Um, it's there's a lot of meticulous work that needs to be done to get it.
Hmm.
So it's not. I'll be honest. I don't know if it's worth it. Doing parametric design in VCarve or Aspire. It is possible, however, and I will find a link to it. Michael Mazalik did a video on doing a parametric design in Aspire. I don't remember if it translates over to VCarve or not. So, but I will look for it and put a link in the description as soon as we're done here live. So, had to get that real quick. And then there's some questions about paper vac veneer. It is a wood veneer, but after they have cut the wood veneer, they glue on a craft paper backing. And I hate it.
Yeah. It's like
They
cloth almost.
they do that so they can cut a thinner veneer and get more square footage out of the same log. It's just it's cheap is what it is.
Yeah.
Um,
And that paperback on the backside, it's like woven. It's not like paper. It's woven material
mhm,
that stretches. And
mhm,
when you pull it apart, all these fibers come out of it. When
yeah,
you cut into that, it's a nightmare.
yeah,
And when I was doing the project, it ended up catching and it bogged my machine down, and I missed a couple steps.
yeah,
When I missed those steps, it just tore everything out.
yeah. And the other thing to consider is when you glue that down, you're not gluing the veneer down, you're gluing that paper backing down. And not always, but there are occasions, depending upon the humidity and various other variables, where that just the moisture in the glue and relative humidity in the air can cause that paper to start delaminating from that veneer. So, what we ended up having to do when we had paperback veneer is we would actually glue down the other side and then sand that paper backing off of the front by running it through our wide belt sander, you know,
Yeah.
which was a mess in and of itself because now you're sanding paper off and then get through that adhesive layer and not take off so much that you burn through the veneer. So it's
Which
just,
is very, very easy to do.
yeah, I avoid paperback veneer like the plague.
Yeah. Lessons
So,
learned.
yeah, I mean, but that's actually supposedly how we learn. I'm of two minds on that score because I've seen people say, well, if you're not breaking bits, you're not learning. And I was like, really? I can break 50 bits and not learn a damn thing. I don't know about
Yeah,
you.
I could drop a bit on the floor, no break.
Yeah, and all I've learned is I gotta order another bit now.
Yeah.
I did that with a 23 thousandths diameter end mill,
Oh,
cutting wanting to cut fret slots in a fretboard. I opened up the thing and it fell out and landed. Tested the tensile strength of the concrete floor I was standing on at the time. Shattered into three pieces. Never even got put in the machine.
yeah.
So,
And
like,
I can tell you that paperback, the only reason why I chose the paperback is
mhm,
because it was so wide.
yeah,
And I couldn't like the regular veneer that's
mhm,
not backed, it's like it's very dimensional. And they glued all these panels together to get this paperback. And
mhm,
that just met my requirement for this
mhm,
big panel that I was doing.
Yeah.
And what else? Mistake.
Yeah. Big mistake. Yeah. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt. So, okay. Let's see. Does anybody else have any questions for either of us? I've got a couple of questions, but they're kind of off to the side. First 20 cars, you showing your age, Mark. Yeah, but this is when you could buy $100 pickup, Steve. You know. Let's see. I'm not seeing any. Okay, yes. Sargon Tavor wants to know, do you have a laser that follows the curves up and down?
Yeah, I do. I have the X Tool P2, and the reason why I got that specific one is because it had that feature. And what it does, it uses a laser to measure points on a surface, and you can build an entire grid. And from that grid and all those different measurements, it will build a 3D mesh on whatever surface that you use. And
Wow.
it's super awesome. And it will follow it, and it can go all the way up and down to a certain degree of a slope. If you get more than 30 to 35, maybe 40-degree slope, it's going to have some issues. But it that thing is super awesome.
And that was which one?
It's the P2. It's I think it's a 55-watt CO2 laser from
Okay.
X-Tool. And yeah, it has that feature built into it, and it has yet to fail. And I've used it, 100 different times, doing a different, curvature from small to large.
Now, let me ask you this about that, because that got gears turning in my brain. Does that create like a point cloud, or can you export that mesh?
You can't. Yeah, it won't let you export it. Yeah, I wish it did, because you could take any surface then and build that mesh and then export it into an STL and take it to a different software.
Yeah,
that's super awesome.
That's what I was thinking.
But it's pretty accurate when it measures that point. It's to the maybe 100 of an inch on the thickness of where it measured it from.
Yeah,
and it's really accurate.
H Center is asking, how fine is that mesh?
Yeah, it's just a plane. It just builds a plane. And
okay. So it's not a point cloud or anything like that. Okay.
Yeah, I'm a little confused on a point cloud. When I think points, like when it measures, it does the points all the way across your defined area, and it'll just measure those points.
A point cloud is similar to that. It measures points, but it also plots those points, which can then be interpreted by other software to create that STL file.
Oh, okay.
So it's used. I'm sure you've seen the old, I hesitate to call them 3D scanners. They're 3D probes.
Yeah.
That is mounted in a spindle that comes along and touches off here and touches off here and does that. That's creating a point cloud. It's just points where at certain elevations, it's figuring out what's there, where it is, and what its shape is.
Yeah.
And those points where it actually touches the object is called a point cloud.
Yeah. So it's the same concept. I wish you could export it. That would be super awesome.
Yeah.
But the surface area on the X tool is only so large. So it's, I want to say it's like a 2 foot by 2 foot area.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay.
So that flag busted that when I did the stars. So I had to position it in the machine, and I had to get pretty, if it was any larger, it wouldn't have been able to do it. Where I would have had to basically panel it to do it.
Okay. Let's see here. Jim Brown, he's asking about that quote unquote mistake cribbage board that you showed a minute ago. That was Palfaro? Was that Palfaro?
No, that's Ziricati.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the African hardwood. They use this stuff for instruments because it has a certain frequency when you hit it.
Yeah.
Most, people that build guitars or violins, they use that stuff because of that frequency.
Okay.
And this stuff is super awesome, the machine. Like
Yeah.
it's oily. So when you run a tool path, you can get very, very tight walls, very thin walls, and it will hold it. It won't chip. It won't do any of that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it
Okay.
was super, super
Nice.
nice.
Yeah. If you want to start I hesitate to say argument, but an intense discussion, go into a guitar forum and start talking about tone woods. And believe me, it's almost as bad as opening up your electrical panel in your shop and putting it online, you know, because I mean, the geeks, the nerds, everybody just dives in. Oh my God, look at that. La, 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 you know.
If they saw this and what I did to this piece of wood, like they would probably come find me.
No, not really, because now if it was a neck that you cut up, then
Right.
they would come after you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you want to start an argument, just tell them you're going to make an oak neck and watch people go crazy, you know.
Yeah.
But um, Pete over at Nature's Live Veg, I believe it's Zircote, Zircote.
Yeah.
Ziri
Oh, yeah.
Cote. I'll bring it up here and also give a good reference here. The wood database. If you want to know something
Yep.
about any kind of a wood, put the name of it in a Google search and then go over to the wood database. But a real quick aside, see what I mean? Is Zircote a good tone wood? That it gets them going. And this will tell you all kinds, it'll give you more information than you want to know about the wood. Rot resistance, workability, odors, toxicity or allergies.
Oh man. Yeah.
It it will give you, and you know what other things that are related to it, and then photos, sanded, sealed, end grain, uh, and pro tip here. If you are looking to add woods and wood materials to your list in the preview option, these photos are a great way of doing it. Download this photo and you can add this material in Vectric. You can add it to your preview. And I did a video on that, which I will put down in the description of this live stream as soon as we're done. So it's that's how I got those weird materials in my preview. So
when I first started woodworking, I had no idea any of this stuff existed.
Yeah.
What ended up happening is when I started getting into veneer, that's when I really started learning about different figures, different grades of different woods. Because the majority of the veneer supply shops still have pictures, and they'll go through and you can really start seeing the difference between what's curly, what's quilted, what's burl, and then the applications between different species. You can really learn a lot and choose the right wood for a specific project.
Yeah. And that wood database is a resource I use all the time because, well, Kimberly's leading to it right here. Show leopard wood and see if it mentions your allergy. It does. And that's how I knew what it was. And the story behind that was my wood supplier got in a bunch of lace wood and found out it was leopard wood. So they couldn't sell it as lace wood. I'd never worked with leopard wood before. I didn't know anything about it. So I got some and I was going to make a jewelry box for my granddaughter out of it because it's gorgeous. But I noticed anytime I handled it, after I touched, rubbed my cheek or something like that, within a few seconds, it would start burning right there.
Yeah.
And it didn't hurt my hands, But you know how it is, you rub and you scratch and everywhere I touched, it started burning. And I went and I looked it up, and sure enough, I mean, they say a high percentage of people report it as a skin irritant. And I'm one of those people. So immediately I had to go find something else to make a jewelry box out of, because I'm not doing that to my granddaughter. You know, I don't know if she'd have a reaction to it, but I did. Don't want to take the chance. But something I have noticed is they say that there may be some toxicity. How do they put it? Let me go back up here. I'll bring that back in. It has been shown to cause cross reactions once an allergic sensitivity to certain woods have been developed. And they get into if you have a problem with these woods, you'll probably have a problem with this. They say that about a number of woods. And woods that I don't have any kind of a reaction to are included in this. It just happens to be I'm one of those folks. So it's an individual type of basis type of a
Yeah.
thing.
And that specific wood, when I was
Mhm.
cutting it, I had a mask on.
Mhm.
The next day, I couldn't breathe very well. Like,
Yeah.
it really did affect me, even with the mask on.
Yeah.
And that was my first indication of, I was
Mhm.
like, what is this stuff? And then
Yeah.
I started doing some research on it. And,
Yeah.
uh,
I
because,
if
like,
I'm
one woman
cutting
did that to me, Purple
if
Heart.
I'm cutting something unknown, I wear a full respirator with a particle mask, and that's the another important thing. Not all filters are made for all things. You know, you have filters that are made for fumes, you have filters that are made for particles. So, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, exactly, Butch. That's the best. That is the best reason to have dust masks when working with exotic materials. Absolutely. You know, we're all different. We're all individuals. And, you know, Michael Ludwig says he has a reaction to white oak. I don't have any reactions to oak until I get a splinter. If I get a splinter, red oak or white oak, it doesn't matter which. If I get a splinter, I know it immediately, and I know exactly where it is because it burns like fire. And it's just the tannins in the wood. But I
Yeah.
can handle it, work with it, sand it, all that other good stuff. I'm fine until I get a splinter. And it just burns like crazy. So, well, let's see. We've been going for almost an hour, and I have to say Maurice has a time limit today. So we may have to get to a couple of questions. If you have to take off, feel free when it comes to it. But you know, Kimberly is asking, is there an app where you can snap a camera pic of your wood and it takes you to the correct entry in the wood database? Not that I'm aware of. You're talking about identifying wood, right? Are you aware of any kind of an app?
No, I'm not, but that would probably be $1 million idea
It
for
would be.
he algorithms are so the AI that's in your cameras on your iPhones now are so advanced that it can pick up and categorize and identify very, very quickly.
Mhm.
That's something that is not outside the realm of possible.
I know there are a few apps that are kind of being worked on, um, and but I don't know how good they are. There are a couple of there are a couple of them that work for plants, but where you can like take a picture of the leaves or something like that, or the bark, and it'll tell you what plant it is. But the problem with woods is that there's no accounting for finishes. There's no accounting for age, because like cherry, you freshly cut cherry, you take a picture of that, it is going to be a different color if you
Right.
let it sit and oxidize for 2 days.
Yep.
It's going to be different. So basically, the way I look at it when people ask me about identifying wood, um, that's my attitude. Yep, it's wood, but that's about all I can tell you. I could tell you it's not a monkey. That's about all. So, um,
Kimbler,
there are,
yeah, you're gonna have to put a patent on that right away.
yeah, get to work on it. If you know any developers at all, it's great. You know,
Yeah.
um,
So Purple Heart, Ray put that in there. So that's a perfect example. Like Purple Heart doesn't stay purple.
mhm,
If it
no,
has reaction to the sun for long enough, it'll turn a darkish color, but it's still Purple Heart.
no,
The grain structure is still there, but it changes the overall definition of it pretty fast.
not even just. It doesn't even have to be sunlight. It just has to be oxygen.
Right.
And I'll bring it up here. It's funny that we're getting into these discussions because I'm able to show off a few pictures from some friend of mine. Um, my friend Ralph down in Nevada built this Purple Heart guitar, and I mean, he did great, but that guitar was built in 1997. I took this picture in 2012, and it's still as purple as the day he sanded it. The thing is, there's about 15 coats of lacquer on this guitar, maybe more, and it's completely sealed from air. Um, they it Its oxidization is what
Right.
causes that change in color. Paduke will turn brown. Purple Heart will
Yep.
turn brown. You have to seal it from oxygen and UV, and it's tricky. It 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 can be tricky. Now, obviously, he did it with the Purple Heart, but again, probably 15 coats of clear lacquer over it. So, yeah, which means that you see a lot of these pretty cutting boards made with Purple Heart and Paduke and things like that. They look great at first, but they're going to turn brown later on down the road. So just know that going in. So, um, I would hope the wood database would have different versions of each wood, old, new, and various finishes. There are so many finishes out there, they couldn't cover them all. So, about all you can do is, I mean, I make light of it, but you can obviously narrow down what wood species it is. But for instance, if you've never worked with zircote before and you see one piece, that's limited experience with that one piece. So, I mean, I don't know about you, but I've seen different patterns in different
Yep.
trees or different sections of the same tree. So it can get pretty hard to identify exactly what something is.
Yeah. If it has a different figure,
Mhm.
if it's highly figured, like it changes everything. And then you start looking at it like, is that what is it, is monkeypox?
Monkey pod? Yeah,
Monkey pod, yeah.
yeah,
That looks like walnut, highly figured walnut to me sometimes.
yeah, it can.
And I'll go back and forth whether which species it actually is.
Yeah, and monkey pod, just to let you know, if you ever go to Hawaii and you see any of the Hawaiian woodworking, number one, it's made in China. Number two, it's made of monkey pod.
Yeah,
So it's made of monkey pod, which is and monkey pod is very light, very punky, almost balsa wood light. So if it's got any heft to it at all, it's not monkey pod.
yeah,
But so yeah, zebra wood is all over the map. And there are a bunch of others that are the same way.
yeah,
I mean, uh, so identifying wood is not the easiest task, but there's some things you can do. Obviously, if it's a dark wood, you can eliminate maple or ash, you know, and to start looking at grain structure. Um, You know, it's you can get pretty deep into it, but some of the mahoganies are a little difficult to identify because they look so similar to other things. I don't have any right here handy. Yeah, I
But
did a
that
while
will
ago.
make, a CNC project that's, you know, um, depending on the choice of wood, where it takes something very simple to something really extraordinary,
Mhm.
and the application and just how elegant it is based on the wood
Yeah,
fibers and the grain structure, the figure and all that. Like it really does. It can take a project just to a different level.
yeah, yeah. And that kind of dovetails into finding a good hardwood supplier. And the easiest way I have found is I just Google hardwoods with my postal code or the postal code of the big city as close to me as I can get. Here in the US, it's zip code. For those overseas, the postal code. And yeah, you're going to probably get a few hardwood floor installers and what have you. So you might have to wade through those. But I found a real good hardwood supplier in town that way. And I don't know, it's kind of the luck of the draw. I happen to be in between some of the major shipping ports, between Los Angeles, San Francisco, and to the north of me is Portland and Seattle. I can get a lot of the exotics for a lot cheaper than I can get domestic hardwoods because I'm on the West Coast in the Pacific Northwest. This is softwood lumber country. I mean, I can get you cedar, pine, fir, spruce all day long, real cheap. But I can buy purple heart and zebra wood and things like that for cheaper than I can buy walnut.
Yeah. And
Um,
I'm in the same position here in Colorado Springs.
mhm,
I mean, the board foot for walnut,
mhm.
cherry, like just the
Crazy.
basic hardwoods.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just astronomical here. So
Yeah.
I'll import all my wood over from Oregon and have
Mhm.
them ship here because at the end of the day, the board feet makes sense based on the
Yeah.
shipping. Um,
Yeah.
and actually, I'll share this. I'm super excited about this. I have a. This will be. We bought a house over the summer,
Uh-huh.
and so I have a
Ooh.
whole bunch of Oregon black walnut slabs that are coming.
Ooh.
And I got two big slabs. Those will be computer desks for my computer area upstairs. We're going to remodel that entire area, and this will be the showcase of
Yeah.
that. So those come in actually tomorrow. But I have a whole bunch of other hardwoods and some exotics that are included in that shipment. And I'll do. I have a couple plans for a couple different projects that I'll incorporate some of that stuff in. And
Well, the wood nerd in me just kind of geeked out over this whole thing because I mean, wow.
yeah, so that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Uh, and I got a whole bunch of burl slabs that I got from
Mhm.
them prior. And
Yeah.
the wood suppliers, you got to be really careful. Well,
Yeah.
luckily, I kind of deep dived into this guy that I use, and
Mhm.
he air dries for at least 2 years, and then he'll kiln dry and everything. And
Okay.
he'll check every square foot of this board to make sure
Mhm.
there's no trap moisture or anything like that.
Um, uh, Pete is asking, who did you get that walnut from?
Yeah, this is Blackwood. Let's see, Deadwood Sawmill out of
Okay.
Oregon, and
Okay.
he's a super awesome guy. He harvests trees that are already fallen,
Mhm.
so he's not going out and cutting brand new trees down. These are already stuff that's laying down, and he's
Yeah.
cleaning the areas up and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
from the walnut to the burls to some of the really exquisite, like high grade curly maple, quilted maple. I
Yeah.
get all of my stuff from him. He's
So
super
he's
awesome.
he's an urban logger.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. There's a lot of that going on. I'm kind of at the bottom fringe. I know one guy here locally that does it, but you get north up around Salem, Eugene, and then points a little bit east of that, Portland, and then up into Washington. There are a lot of folks doing that. It's kind of a stormy area. They get high winds and it'll blow over a black walnut
Yep.
that's a couple hundred years old. And but it is not something that's easy to find. I mean, it's not common here. That's why it makes sense for them to go out and harvest these
Yeah.
urban trees.
And he specializes in redwood. And again, those are all protected trees. You can't fall one of those trees anymore.
No.
But he'll go out and he'll find fallen stuff that he can harvest, and then he'll do all the sawmill stuff and get it to the point where you can actually work with it.
It's a younger man's game, and I
It
really,
is.
really, really wish I was about 40 years younger so I could play. But one of the things about Oregon is commercial logging on the coast is illegal. And what I mean by that is driftwood. Anything that
Yeah.
is on the beach, it is illegal to harvest that for commercial use. You can go pick up as much as you want for your own use. If you want to pick up a piece of driftwood, go home, cut it into stuff, and make something out of it, go for it. But they will not allow you to use any machinery. California, on the other hand, does allow that. And so you will find redwood on the beach in California if you can fight off everybody else that wants it. So that's where a lot of redwood burls come from. It's where a lot of myrtlewood burls come from, is the California coast, because they're
Yeah.
harvesting those trees that got washed downstream and then carried off.
Yeah.
Yeah, people asking, can you find and post a link to that supplier? You can't post links, Maurice.
Yeah, I just found that out.
If you can put it over here in the private chat, I will put it in there.
Okay.
Then, I mean, your best bet is just, okay, let me copy that and put it over here. And this is, what is this?
This is Deadwood Sawmill. And so he hosts weekly on his Facebook. He has a private group that it's free to join and all that stuff. And then he'll do auctions for different pieces of wood, different dimensional, different. And, it's a lot of it's offcuts, but then he'll get into bigger slabs and all that stuff. And then what I find is, if I'm looking for something very specific, I'll send him a message and be like, hey, I'm looking for this. And the majority of the time he has it.
There is a supplier up about 3 cities up north of me, about 30 miles away from here. The company is called Oregon Burls. And this guy has been on Discovery Channel. He's known as the Burl Hunter. And he goes all over the West Coast, down into Southern California, out to Idaho, all up into the far north in Washington as he can get. And his big thing is tracking down burls. Yeah. And he'll take down the tree and bring it up, and they saw them and dry them and everything. And he's up north of me in Grants Pass. I will try to find links to these companies and put them down in the description as soon as I'm done here. I know you've got to take off. You've got a deadline.
Yeah, but, so I have a good 5-6 minutes left. So.
Okay. Do we have any final questions for Maurice? I would invite you, while we're waiting to see if you have any questions, I would invite you and highly encourage you, whether you use Fusion 360 or not, to head over to Erickson Design and Woodworking YouTube channel. There's a link already down in the description. Give him a subscribe and get over there and look at his videos. I mean, there's 3D grid holders. There is the what would you call that?
There was a space theme thing that I kind of went through a couple months ago.
Yeah.
But I liked the profile, and some of those profiles were exaggerated.
Yeah.
And being able to manipulate that in a way that made something tangible is something that I really wanted to dig into.
Okay. And then the flags as he created them, the flag jigsaw puzzles, a wavy flag jigsaw puzzle. Are you kidding me, Maurice? This is the one that really impressed me was that headboard. Well, it's not even a headboard. It looks like tufted leather. And speaking as a guy who does upholstery, it looks like tufted leather. You did a fabulous job on that.
Yeah. And that was different applications of ferric nitrate and how iron reacts with different types of wood.
Yeah.
And wood selection is super important for that thing to react correctly to make that effect. That was a pretty cool thing.
And it was just gorgeous work. Believe me, it was really gorgeous work. And just using, laser engraving and make perfect splines with inlays. Some of the cribbage boards you've made and the marquetry you've done and the inlays you've done is just absolutely fantastic. And there's the video on that cribbage board that you created that you showed earlier. I mean, do yourself a favor, even if you don't use Fusion 360, get over there and take a look at Maurice's channel and do subscribe and binge watch it. There's some great stuff over there. So, let's see, Maurice, you're going to have to take off in a minute. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. There are a couple questions that I didn't get to, and I apologize. Brooks Martin, are crayons food safe? I've eaten probably 1 million in my lifetime, and I'm just fine. Nothing wrong with me. I wouldn't advertise them as food safe. Yeah. There is Steve right on it. Maurice's YouTube channel right there. And there is a link to your YouTube channel down in the description. Anything else you want to wrap up with? Anything you want to talk about? Something you got coming up you want to discuss? Or
yeah, no. So I think here in the next 6 months, I'm going to upgrade my CNC. I'm still on the fence whether I'm going to go to Avid or Stepcraft but what I want is a automatic tool change, and then deep dive into how to program that and be as efficient as possible, doing multiple different, tool changes and profiles and creating something that is geared towards that. I'll probably do a large format CNC and try to get to the 5 to 10 foot range.
Okay.
But that's probably here in the next 6 months. Into the next year, I'll get back into metalworking, and I'm almost ready to pull the trigger on my plasma cutter. So I'll start getting into metalwork, but I'm going to incorporate wood and all of that stuff. And
nice.
Use the different, mediums and how they can work together.
Yeah.
It should be super cool.
You guys that do metal, that's always been a little bit of magical mystery voodoo to me, because the lines of my tape measure aren't that close together. I can't figure that stuff out.
But all that stuff translates between the G code, and it's all the same. The post processing is just a little bit different, and then physical material and yield is
Well, my big thing is metal is just too dirty to be with a wood shop for me. So a lot of people make it work, but I am not that guy. All righty. Thank you, everybody, for spending part of your Sunday with me and Maurice. Really appreciate it. Did I treat you okay? Would you be okay with coming back? I mean, I didn't put you on the spot or anything.
Nope. And I'm so thankful that, being in this community and being in touch with you. I mean, what you're doing weekly, like I can't thank you enough for the things that you're talking about, especially the the community that you built of like-minded CNC builders and woodworkers. Like it's been phenomenal. I have been a subscriber for a while now.
Well, thank you for that. I do appreciate that. But I mean, it's all about the people. This whole thing has never been about me. It's always been about showing people that there's no magic, there's no mystery. You can do this. If I can do it, you can do this. It's not over your head. And if I've helped anybody in that regard, then my work here is done. The community are the people who make this fun and keep it fun. You're going to be doing more live streams?
Yeah, not today. I was going to post a video yesterday, and life things came up, and I had to reprioritize a couple different things. So next week, new video, and then I'll keep that live stream going weekly.
Okay, sweet. So get over there and subscribe to Maurice's channel, and yeah, well, I'll be hanging in your live streams as well as much as I can. Channel members, tomorrow, Dwayne and we're going to get into incorporating SketchUp into our workflow and doing a little bit of work on that. And then, because Dwayne and I are confident that this is going to be a 20-minute discussion, we're going to get into making some of those deviled egg trays that Kurt made so popular here lately. I'm going to do it in VCarve to show you that it can be done in VCarve. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, or you'd like some information on how to become a channel member, click that join link down there below this video panel somewhere. I never know where they're going to put it. And another video will pop up, another panel will pop up, and a video will play, tell you all about channel membership. Channel members, remember to check the community tab. That's the link to tomorrow evening's live stream. I'll see you then. For everybody else, I'll see you next week. Thank you. Y'all take care. Thank you, Maurice.
Thanks, Mark.